Okay, thank you for coming back. It's a great pleasure to have a panel of distinguished speakers here today with us. My name is Marcos Korik. I'm Associate Professor at City University of Hong Kong. And before I announce each of our speakers, I just want to say a little bit about the theme of today's panel. We're talking about digital media, and we're talking about AI, digital media that we usually call communication tools, so they're supposed to help us communicate, and AI that's supposed to augment our existing abilities. So we're looking at case uses and use cases for those times when digital media help us communicate and help us bring us together, but also times when they keep us apart. So if you think about, for example, examples of political polarization, if you think about algorithmic filtering, if you think about all these trends that you've seen where birds of feather are flying even closer together, and then we are kind of apart from others. And then also for AI, you can see clearly that the potential for helping, for example, migrants integrate into the new environment, but also bringing with them their own country and never actually wanting to sort of get to know the new environment. I come from Hong Kong, where a lot of students come from mainland China, and they have their whole life, their whole ecosystem of digital apps that's completely different from, for example, the ecosystem that we have. And almost everything that you want to do can be done using digital media from your own kind of origin country. So I think this panel will talk about some positive influences, positive effects of new technologies, and also some things that perhaps we should be concerned about. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker. It's Annie Lestari. From International Migrants International. So she is an activist with about 15 years of experience. And she's going to talk a little bit about kind of real world experience of migrants and their use of digital technologies. Please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I hope you have a good lunch and are not sleepy. It's a not good time to have very serious conversation. But I'll try my best to share with you my actual experience. So I used to work in Hong Kong as a migrant domestic worker for like more than 20 years. So, but I never met Marco though. We live together in the same city. And I was very active in organizing Indonesian, Filipino, Nepali, and different nationality of domestic workers within Hong Kong. But beyond that, since 2008, I was involved with the International Migrants Alliance. So my scope actually go higher into organizing global migrant and refugee, and it's quite challenging, and this is where the actually digital communication become really a thing in our organizing. So just to begin with, so about IMA, the International Migrants Alliance was founded in 2008. It was really aimed to gather mainly grassroots migrant and refugees because in 2008, when there is global crisis, we really face attack all the time. And now there is another attack. Donald Trump is actually in the lead of attacking people of color in the US. Undocumented migrants become the main target. And now around the world are actually attacking migrant and refugees. So when we established IMA, our aim is really how to bring the voices of from the ground to the regional and global. Because these migrants are very vulnerable, they are segregated, they are isolated, and there is no way for them to even engage in regional or international platform. But here, the migration is really a main agenda worldwide. So and as for today, we have more than 200 members in 35 countries, and 80% of our members are grassroots. And what we believe is we rely on the power of collective action of the mass movement of migrants. So we really aim to establish stronger movement on the ground. So our belief is bottom-up approach. And the last thing is we really want to air or promote really the actual voices of the migrant and refugee at the global arena. Just want to introduce you the reality of migration. So today we have at least 270 or 80 million migrants. I believe the number increased with the war, political conflict, and more poverty and climate change everywhere. And most of it, like 70% of them are temporary migrants. So when I say temporary migrant, they are not permanent at all. They are just there for 2 years, 1 year, or 5 years at most. And beyond that, there is also internationally displaced migrant. The old data is 65 million, but now with the war in Ukraine And in Gaza, I believe the number is already double or even triple, yeah? And then the last one, when we say who are really the cause of the people moving out from their homeland, is really poverty or impoverishment, political conflict and wars, and climate crisis. Okay, so what are really the realities? Before I talk about really the digital issues within our context, the migrant and the refugee in labor, even the refugee, we call them refugee labor, because in general, refugee are also working. They are not just there as an unemployed and receiving benefit, but many of them are really seeking employment, education, and even access to health. So migrant and refugee labor, they are mainly doing the 3D job, dirty, difficult, danger, the job that local even don't want to do it. I think Singapore is one of the classic example. Most of them are really temporary. They don't have right to stay, to settle, or bring their family, and they are bonded into one employer or company. The salary is very low, only 1/3 or half of the local, and they are excluded from any legal protection in most of the countries. There are few countries who include them in the labor protection, but it's very, very minimum. And beyond that, there are also lack or no protection in terms of working safety, and suffer long working hours, lack of rest day. So I'll just stand up. And also inhuman accommodation, like a lot of the construction workers, even in Singapore, Malaysia, they are put in the same kind of a big number of people in the same camp. The domestic worker, they have to live in without a possibility of live out, and a lot of fees have to be paid to the agencies. Because of that, their personal passport, employment contract, and so forth are being kept by the agency. And illness, injuries, and death are very common, and lack of access to public spaces to rest. Even on Sunday when we go out, doesn't mean you can just sit and rest everywhere, yeah, because government are quite strict with that. And in most cases, like what happened now, we are used as scapegoat and being discriminated. Arrest, imprisonment, and deportation are very common. And then socially excluded and segregated. So now going to the digital media, why do we need digital media? So I was living in the era without digital, before Facebook and after Facebook. So before Facebook, everything is physical. If you don't go out, you don't meet people. If you don't meet physically, there is no way for you to organize. But during the transition to the digital media platform, so more people are so excited, especially for the migrant. Why? It's very psychological. Why? They need to, the digital media actually help them to facilitate family role and responsibilities. Especially women migrants, they are still mothering, even is far away. So long distance parenting become possible because of the digital media. And maintaining a role as a wife or husband relationship, although of course the case of separation and divorce is quite big among the migrant population, and even elderly care means they are still taking care of their mother-in-law, long distance, aside of the money they send back home. Second is really enabling social life. Remember, once you are migrant, you lose everything. That it includes your freedom. You are isolated. If you have a day off, then you have friend. If you don't have day off, no friend. Even after 2 years, 5 years. In the past, before the possibility of having day off, migrants don't have a day off in 5 years. So it's very normal. But now at least they have in Singapore 1 or twice a month day off. That is not even enough, for mental health also. So, but somehow the social media or the digital media help them to have a better social life. It helps them connect with fellow migrant, same nationality or different nationality. They also learn update and knowledge without waiting in-person communication because everything is being shared very fast. And then the next one is fostering creativities. Many of them become very, very creative in many things. They promote their cooking, they promote their, cultural exchange, their relation with their employer, for example, they promote that. So a lot of exchanges because of that. And the last thing is really forming or joining union or association. So they are now, the social media is used to recruit new members. We don't have to meet, but we have a group in Taiwan, in Singapore, in Malaysia. And the last one is promote right, organizing and mobilizing. When we say this is, of course, about the policies of the government. During COVID, it became very, very obvious because we cannot do anything and government changed regulation all the time, every month. So there is no way except to just send out through social media. And also we promote right. Everyone is trying to say, okay, if you are being terminated, this is what you have to do, something like that. And also the issues that we are facing. coordination among leaders and members. We also provide paralegal services to the fellow migrants, what to do if they are being terminated, they are being abused, and so on. And the last thing, connecting and strengthening solidarity to migrants group in different areas and countries. COVID-19 was very classic example where everyone is confined, but solidarity is possible through digital media. So what are the challenges that we face in the digital media? It has always been in the history of migration that the media in the past, mainstream media, now including alternative media, has been used to further stigmatize, segregate, and criminalize the migrants. Now, let's, for example, Donald Trump, the way he legitimized his policies to crack down, you know, his mission is to deport 11 million undocumented migrants. But it's not only undocumented that he targets, like what they said in the morning, the speakers. He targets everyone who is opposing his policies. Of course, beyond that also, people with green visa status. That means even you are born in the US, you could be a target of deportation, and he is really doing that. So this kind of digital media has been used to legitimize saying that, oh, you are criminal, you come here undocumented, that's why. So now people in the US accept that, but look at what happened. Not only undocumented, everyone who doesn't want these policies will be a target. The next one is really a tool to monitor, crack down, and criminalize activism among migrants and their defender. And this is very well known. I'm sorry to say even Malaysia, Singapore, now Hong Kong. Look at Hong Kong. You cannot say that I don't like these policies because the next time when you renew your visa, it will be part of your interview and so on, right? So it's really become sensitive now. And also, in terms of inhuman regulation of host government, the challenge is we want to say a lot against the regulation because it becomes suppressive against migrants and refugees, but we cannot do it. But every single day, new policies are coming against us. So that's really a big issue. So really, we do not know what to do. And this is really the ongoing problem among the movement itself. We do not know what to do to expose all these policies. The next one is worsening crisis and dependency on remittances push many of the government, Philippines, Indonesia, Bangladesh, to send more migrants. We are still dealing with the problem in host countries, but more people are coming. So more exploitation, yet we cannot say it out loud. And normalization of modern day slavery and forced labor become very, very common now. And the last thing is social media is effective somehow in our campaign, but not to address structural issues. So if you have a case of abuse or killing, you can use it to win the case. But it doesn't work when it comes to regulation, immigration, and on those kind of structural issues. And the last one is, when it comes to social media, our challenge is really the language. You can only speak in English, and lucky now there is, what is it when you put in Facebook, translated automatic. And thanks to YouTube also, they have that kind of language. But still, when we try to relate information, even from NGO working for migrants, they're also having difficulties of language. How to say it in Urdu, how to say it in Bangla, how to say it in Bahasa, all this kind of challenges. And the lack of skill, human and financial resources, even for digital media, migrants are the #1 user of smartphone. But doesn't mean they are very aware of how to use it properly. Yeah, so that's one way. Also, even in the early time when the Zoom was introduced, it took us 2 months just to educate them how to download Zoom. Because otherwise, they will be completely isolated in their employer houses, companies, and so on. So that kind of skill is really needed. Instability of membership, in our case, a lot of people losing the job, being terminated. Now with the immigration monitoring our Facebook, all the more it's part of the screening against activism. Organizing and mobilization of migrants really depend on the kind of employers. And a lot of employers are leaving. You know, in Hong Kong recently, because of the movement, a lot of good people, like pro-democracy movement are leaving. So those people are our employers. That means we are also vulnerable. And the last thing also, the digital literacy, again, the phone download battery is really limited. This is one of the biggest challenges why even we tell them, join the Zoom, join this, join. Their phone cannot accommodate the new application. And we cannot tell them, just buy a new phone. They don't have the money for that. So it's really a challenge. That's why our movement, we have to put everything in YouTube so they can watch for free after that. So those are part of the strategies and the plus minus of the digital media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. This is a very insightful presentation about the everyday life of migrants, transnational migrants. And I would like to invite next speaker, Dr. Irfan Wahyudi, who is the Director of Global Engagement at University of Airlanga, and also a professor there who studies migration. Please.
Thanks, Marco. Good afternoon, everyone. So after Annie speaks, it is good actually for me to continue because I was doing the research on media activism since 2012 and was partnering actually with Annie and the team and the gang for over a decade now. And this is part of our study actually in Hong Kong during the pandemic. So the title, State Sponsor of Stigma and Discrimination, Female Indonesian Migrant in Hong Kong during the pandemic, is actually an article wrote back in 2021 for the research until 2022, and it was published in 2024. So for this part, I would like to emphasize that the challenges here that experienced by especially domestic migrant workers in Hong Kong, and at this time I was talking about these Indonesian migrant workers because during the pandemic they were being part of the object of discrimination, and as what I have called as a state-sponsored stigma means that it was led actually by the government during that time. So this is actually the headline, produced in Hong Kong in 2021. Anger as Hong Kong orders compulsory COVID tests for cities, 370,000 domestic workers amid mutant strain fears. So this actually started with one domestic workers coming from the Philippines that was actually caught COVID, and she was told that because you are leaving your house during your rest time, so that's why it makes you vulnerable and you are experiencing these kind of symptoms. And afterwards, this has become a compulsory test for everyone. Everyone are the domestic workers because of this one case. Yet in Hong Kong, people during that time are still going everywhere, even though they are also using masks and other kind of protection. But the policies actually targeted migrant domestic workers during that time. Hong Kong health officials announced the mandatory vaccination and testing of all domestic workers after 2 workers tested positive. And authorities said that domestic workers were high risk because they often work with the elderly and meet in parks on Sundays, and that's the only their off days. Because during the work days, they cannot leave the house. They still need to work inside. Started from 5 a.m. in the morning and lasted until 12 p.m. And they only have like very limited resting hours. So these kind of off days become something that's very important to them. Yet during COVID, they cannot do that. And it said that it will implicate as well to their condition back in Hong Kong, because most of Hong Kong's 370,000 domestic workers come from Indonesia and the Philippines, countries that are both severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It also adds how they try to see these migrant workers. So a very important comment put by the Asian Migrants Coordinating Body by Dolores Baladares said that government officials should set an example for the people about how to treat others with respect and dignity, and not to put in any group of society in position where they are a target of discrimination. By announcing that it is compulsory for migrant workers to have the vaccination means that they also put this kind of stigma to them, to the migrant workers. And who fully emphasized as well by Annie Lestari. I always quoted Annie during that time because you're still in Hong Kong during that time, right? But the decision shows that Hong Kong government unfairly blames migrant domestic workers for the spread of coronavirus and is fanning the negative sentiment against migrant domestic workers. And it's not only happened during the pandemic beforehand, it was always be on the fault of migrant domestic workers if something happened to the, especially to the family, because migrant domestic workers always become a target of everything that is negative in the family. Further comments were also put by Sringatin, also an activist there, that during the pandemic, the workers suffered greatly. They were prohibited from taking holidays outside the home. And during the holidays, they were accused of spreading virus. They were intimidated and discriminated and were not given any assistance during that time. Because many of these kind of, well, you can actually say that, well, this is good. I mean, the compulsory vaccination is good, but how the effect were actually quite big, because there are problems at the workplace, because the employer always said that you are the source of the virus. We cannot let you out. You need to be at home entirely. And it makes domestic workers put themselves into a very limited condition. They feel fear and self-doubt about their condition because they've always been told that they are the source of this kind of spread of the virus. And it's also become source of violence because if they are not listening to the employer, there will be consequences. Yeah, they are. I think they are, and also reading about the escalation of violence happened during the pandemic because of this kind of policy, and also job loss, the one that pretty much, very much feared by the migrant domestic workers because they don't have anything to do afterwards. Yeah, because they are still in Hong Kong. And when the employer terminating the contract means that they are needed to be departed the home immediately, means they don't have anywhere to go. Yeah, so this kind of thing happened during the pandemic. And I quoted one of Annie's posts on Facebook, yeah, because until now, yeah, when I was starting in 2013, I was also using Facebook as my tools of research. And until now, the Facebook is still the prominent social media for migrant domestic workers. On the screen, you see that how they protest, yeah. And it's also emphasized by Annie that it is something that really need to be used. But as you can see, there are limited ways of telling the protest. And this is how they resist the stigma. They still come together in parks, even though it was actually forbidden during that time. Maximum 5 people in a park, yeah, or in a congregation, and if it is not, there will be like a fine of 5,000 Hong Kong dollar during that time. Yeah, so they still have to do this, but with limitation. But afterwards, we can see that the rise of digital activism is actually quite important. Well, we have witnessed this previous years before, especially during the case of Eriwana Sulistianisi, who was tortured by her employer back in 2014. But several years later, during the pandemic, it happened again. The activism started because the migrant workers, they don't want to just like let it be. They want to protest, and they are using social media. And this is one of the Zoom that has been delivered by Annie during that time. And also have this kind of advocacies when they are inviting the lawyers that actually, or advocates that actually have their positive contribution to the movements through the Facebook Live, through also workshops, online workshops that actually situated late at night at 10 p.m. Hong Kong time, yeah, where they already have their rest time. And this is the result. After several days, after the policy has been put, the Hong Kong drops discriminatory vaccine plans for foreign workers. And it's actually become the result of the protest that has been done, especially through the social media channels. And it is noted that issues arise during the pandemic in the home and host countries reflected through a series of incidents, stereotypes, and stigma, the one that happened in Hong Kong. Pandemic handling in the host countries resulted in virtual activism that has been performed by migrant domestic workers organization and expanded through multiple platforms, especially on through Facebook and YouTube, and communication technology allowed them to move further in communicating their causes and gain support from fellow migrants and also from the community. It was embodied through virtual channels, as well as their across and outside world despite their demanding working hours. It has been brought significant results in creativity, social interaction, and political engagement, and that can be done through the digital activism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Infern, for this presentation. This shows that the use of digital tools could lead to tangible outcomes. In this case, something that was a human right issue from the start. Now I would like to invite Dr. Abdul Rahman, who is a senior lecturer at RMIT Vietnam, to deliver his presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much. This good number of people. Before I'm starting, okay, while waiting, could you please raise your hand if you love using ChatGPT? Loving it, right? I know. We need to be honest that we love ChatGPT to some extent. I'm not going to talk about ChatGPT, but I'm going to talk about AI governance. Almost every day, including ChatGPT, is part of LLMs, large language models. We call it AI, but actually it's not really AI. It is just a chatbot. Okay? So the next 9 minutes probably, I'm going to just try to unpack why we need to talk about AI governance. So the previous presenters have discussed the use of digital platforms, and we have been talking about digital platforms and tech governance. Now we are shifting to the idea of how we could govern AI in Southeast Asia. This is still a very, very nascent issue. And then if we intersect this issue with the idea of social inclusions, then the story is very, very dismal. We don't really have frameworks or regulations that is specifically addressing the intersections between inclusions and AI in Southeast Asia. So I will be elaborating AI governance and inclusions through the lens of Vietnam, where I'm based in. So, but I would like to start from this food. We love talking about food as much as we love using ChatGPT in Southeast Asia, right? When we're looking at Indonesia and Vietnam particularly, these two countries, example of two emerging markets that are shaping the region's AI governance landscape. So in Vietnam, recently in June, the government has enacted the first AI industry and then digital technology industry law. In Indonesia, many of us know that there are some governance frameworks that is catered to the need of AI regulations. In Singapore, we know we have the Singapore model, of course. But in some other countries in Southeast Asia, especially in the emerging markets, such as Cambodia, tech governance and AI governance are almost non-existent. So let's try to think about AI governance through the lens of Southeast Asia. Okay, so this is an example from the law on digital technology and semiconductor industry in Vietnam. So I'm just going to cherry pick the idea of inclusions there. In the clause 84, if I'm not mistaken, this is word by word, the use of an artificial intelligence system that exploit the weakness of an individual or group of people due to age, disability, or severely distorted economic or social circumstances. So this is the explicit notions of inclusions in the existing law in Vietnam, specifically looking at AI governance. So let's try to unpack this idea surrounding inclusions and AI governance. So when we're looking at this, protections is the foundations. We need to protect groups that have been historically marginalized, such as the disabled, such as the poor, and of course, we're thinking about other groups that, again, have been historically marginalized. The question is it sufficient to protect? So that's probably the critical perspective to the existing governance framework. So these are just some of the notes. And again, this is not a direct criticisms toward the existing policy. As you know, I live in Vietnam, so I have to be careful and to be politically savvy. That's supposed to be a joke, but anyway, it doesn't land very well. Anyway, okay, so in the law, in the governance framework, we know that education and training are the backbone for the growth of the AI industry in the country. But inclusive development demands stronger attention to marginalized communities. So that is in the law, that is in the policy framework. The current governance frameworks often reflect AI determinism. So it means that our life will be, quote unquote, directly shaped by AI. Many of us here probably like to believe that because that is something that immediately we could see. Okay? But we also need to think about that the thinking that AI will directly shape our life kind of overlooking the diverse life experience of the marginalized groups. What does that mean? The idea that age, disability are lumped together into one category is kind of reducing the life experience of different groups of people. Let's say we have heard about the stories about migrant workers. They have their own life experience. And then if they are, some of you identify yourself as a disabled person, your life experience is certainly different from those who are reaching to a certain age, all senior citizens. The fact that these groups are lumped together, put together as a single category, it means reducing their own life experience. So the policies, ideally, should empower this group by recognizing their perspective and enabling participation in the AI development. This is something that we are trying to advocate, especially if you are based in emerging markets in Southeast Asia or other markets in Asia, and you want to make sure that AI governance or regulations works for everybody, not just for the tech companies, not just for the government. So this is something that I would like, again, to repeat. If your country is still trying to form AI governance frameworks, make sure that you also advocate different representations of different groups of people so that AI governance in your area, in your country, can be more inclusive. I'm going to stop right here by saying that protection is not enough. We need to we need to have empowerment in the existing law. That is something that needs to be translated into consistent implementations. Okay? So if you're familiar with the political aspects of Vietnam, then the government just recently restructured the administration's level. So implementing the law at the national level will be very different from the implementation in the provincial levels. So how we can make sure that there is a constant implementation in the law or in the governance frameworks is really important. And then, again, since I live in a very, very in an ecosystem where the role of the government is very centralized, and the representations of civil society groups kind of limited. But if you live in the Philippines or Indonesia, where I'm from, there is enough room for civil society groups to influence or to have representations for shaping the AI governance in Indonesia, or in Indonesia and the Philippines. In Vietnam, there is the framework. There is some room for that, but it's not as spacious as in some other countries such as the Philippines or Indonesia. So I'm just going to conclude that when you're leaving Singapore and you're going back to your country and your country doesn't have a governance framework, make sure that you are participating to shape the inclusiveness of the AI governance framework in wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul. I would like to invite Dr. Dam-Hee Kim from Korea University to tell us a little bit about digital media and political polarization in Korea. So we're shifting from Southeast Asia to East Asia and shifting to the world of politics.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Tommy Kim from Korea University in South Korea. Thanks, Marco, for the kind introduction. So today I will talk about how social media, initially designed to connect people, can sort of facilitate this connection through two of my collaborative projects in Korea and in the United States. So in this age of social media today, we know that autonomous, interactive individuals, audiences, we have heightened control over the types of media and information that they can consume. They can generate contents too, and actively engaged in civic life. So it's in Korean, but we are looking at Google Trends. Just last December, when then President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law, really as a peak, a lot of people were searching martial law and were posting on social media about it. And during protests too, you see the smartphone on the bottom right, and so people can live stream. So this change with social media, you can open the door for engaged citizenry and connect people. However, we also have faced issues of fake news and echo chambers where citizens fail to consume accurate information and diverse viewpoints. And so to focus on these two issues, I'm going to talk about two of my projects. The first one focuses on the Korean impeachment protests and how news coverage covered it. And again, so last December, very late night in Korea, then presidential Yoon declared martial law. On December 7th, impeachment motion was rejected. And then on December 14th, the second motion was passed. So during this time period, starting from the night of December 3rd, many citizens follow the entire process online and offline. Holding protests, and from the photo, do you recognize what they are holding? Light sticks, yeah, K-pop. Any K-pop fans here? So the K-pop light sticks really became a key symbol of these protests. Around the world, we sort of all know that young people are generally politically apathetic, but this time, surprisingly, there were a lot of young protesters demanding Yoon's impeachment. Some say that there were 1 million protesters, and some, depending on which statistics you quote, or 200,000 protesters. So of course, it received a lot of news coverage, and framing is really important in news coverage because it can influence how audiences make sense of and perceive the issue at hand. And we say that there are 4 main protest frames. First one is riot, emphasizing violent behaviors of protesters. Confrontation emphasizes a clash between protesters and the police. Spectacle portrays protests in an entertaining and sensational manner. And lastly, debate kind of portrays protests as ideological conflict. So as you can see with the different colors that I have, debate is the only protest frame that legitimizes protests and portrays protests in a positive light. So we wanted to ask, how did the news coverage of progressive versus conservative TV outlets differ in terms of the amount, tone, and frames used? And for this, we analyzed 92 news videos on YouTube by four, the most widely watched Korean progressive and conservative TV outlets, 2 each. So a lot of numbers here, but there are summaries on the bottom of the slide too. So there were way more coverage by progressive outlets because then President Yoon was with the Conservative Party. And of course, there were more positive tone by progressive outlet. Conservative outlets tended to lean toward neutral and negative tones. When it comes to the 4 protest frames, spectacle featuring celebrities, K-pop light sticks, K-pop songs, drama, emotion, those are most used by both progressive and conservative outlets. Riot and confrontation was mostly used by conservative outlets, while debate was predominantly used by progressive outlets. And so it was notable that the spectacle frame was most widely used across both aisles of political leanings, and they were also associated with positive coverage of protests. And that's contrary to prior research, mostly done in the Western protests, where spectacle was associated with delegitimizing protests. This might be a finding pretty specific to the Korean context of nonviolent protests. However, coverage by progressive versus conservative TV outlets on YouTube, they differed. And so this could deepen existing partisan divides and facilitate echo chambers even more. So the second topic is the fake news issue on social media in the American context. We see a graph here, and so it's the proportion of citizens concerned about what's real, telling what's real versus what's fake when it comes to online news. And we see Asia Pacific near the bottom, 60% of citizens are concerned. That's slightly higher than the global average, which is 58%. So the spread of fake news is a problem, especially on social media. And when we talk about the problems of fake news, common concerns mostly center around less politically sophisticated citizens because they are known to be duped into believing fake news. But we were thinking, maybe sophisticated citizens, vested citizens, people who care to be properly informed, they might be susceptible to the harms of fake news as well. And in terms of measuring sophistication, we turn to a concept called need for cognition. And one consequence could be political cynicism. They just lose faith and confidence and become cynical politically. So on social media, in terms of production of fake news, it's really cheap and easy to create something looks like news. In the past, it was really, really expensive to produce news. You need professionally trained journalists, you need the printing press, you need the editors. But today, you essentially need a smartphone and Wi-Fi connection. And so this is a problem, the lack of professional editorial filtering and fact-checking. Consumption side too, users usually consume news on their small phones when they're on the go, so they are less likely to check the information validity. And then humans like to consume like-minded news, even if it's fake. So, so the survey data analysis shows that as people consume more news on social media, they report that they came across more fake news, which then fosters cynicism. And they're not just becoming more cynical toward established institutions like politicians, the news media, but also they are becoming more cynical toward fellow voters. And what's sort of problematic is that this path to cynicism emerges only among the supposedly good citizens with sophistication and high need for cognition. Take a moment to think about this. I mean, if you really care to be properly informed and you see that there's a lot of misinformation circulating on social media, people actually believing it, you're fed up. You are frustrated and you lose faith. And so what does it all mean? So perceived exposure to fake news, misinformation elevates cynicism towards politicians, the media, and also other voters. And this is problematic because they're not usually the entities who created fake news and distributed fake news. But they are facing damage to their credibility and reputation. We are kind of blaming the wrong targets here. And this is pronounced among sophisticated citizens and so people who care. And we need these people to curate accurate information to people around them, to participate, to maintain our well-functioning societies. And so we may need additional civic programs to support sophisticated citizens, prevent them from becoming more cynical. So the irony is that the use of social media, initially designed for connection, is contributing to social disconnection, making people more cynical. And so to sum up, Korean context of nonviolent protest, news coverage of protests was sort of different from prior research done in the Western context. And news on YouTube could deepen existing partisan divides and even foster echo chambers. Fake news on social media makes especially particularly sophisticated citizens turn away from politicians, the news media, and also fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Damhee. I think this is a particularly interesting angle that it's the fake news, the toxic effect is not just about the misinformation, it's about disengagement, essentially. So it's not the informational value, but it's how it makes us feel about politics and institutions. I would like to take some questions now. We have plenty of time. I would like to ask all of you to participate. We have a microphone in the middle, so just state your name and affiliation and shoot. Any questions, comments?
Hello, I'm Evan. I'm from Indonesia. Thank you for all the speakers. It's great discussion. The first one that I'm going to give a context that AI and digital platform are changing how people communicate across boundaries in Asia. While this technology connect society faster than ever, they also create new kind of disruption. In automation, replacing jobs and affect the slowing down economic growth. At the same time, AI-driven misinformation like deepfake videos spreading across social media, so challenge trust and political stability in Asia countries. So the question is, how should government in Asia respond to this disruption caused by AI and digital platform? What kind of policy are needed to ensure that technology strengthen communication across borders rather than creating new division and misinformation? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Abdul, maybe?
Great questions. I don't know the answer, to be honest. All right, so last month, I was also part of a panel on AI governance, and I also received questions from somebody from the Swedish embassy. The same questions: how should we, as a government representative, govern AI? There is no immediate answer to that. But what I'm going to say is, if it comes to Indonesia, you're from Indonesia, there is something that they call the National Strategy on AI Development. So that is one example from the governance frameworks. But that framework, I have to be careful with my word. That framework doesn't give kind of quote unquote punitive aspects to those who not being careful about designing any kind of technology powered by AI. So what does that mean? If it comes to emerging markets such as Indonesia and Vietnam, most of AI products are produced by democratic, wealthy, individual countries. They are not within the jurisdictions of the countries. So when we are using ChatGPT, this is happening in the US, somebody, a kid, a teenager, kill himself and confide the idea to ChatGPT. That is a real case nowadays. So in the US, litigation could happen because ChatGPT, OpenAI, is within the jurisdictions of the US law. But if the same story happened in Indonesia, we couldn't do anything. Litigation couldn't happen unless you go to the international law, etc., etc. That doesn't work. That is one. And then second, if it comes to the governance, it is also about geopolitical discussions. And again, if it comes to the domestic areas or territories, should we produce our own AI sovereignty, which means we have to have local data server where we could train the AI so that we could regulate it. The downside of doing that is we're going to repeat, quote unquote, the flawed model that OpenAI and other AI company has done. So again, there is no direct answer if it comes to AI governance, but what I could say is that we all agree that we need to have framework to make sure when everybody is using AI, it needs to be safe and secure. And then we also need to pay more attention to those who are vulnerable, those who have been historically marginalized, such as the migrants who probably the digital literacy rate is very low, and then the people with disability as well. So that conversations need to be mainstream across Southeast Asia, as well as in the emerging market, because again, we all here are AI users or LLM users, but we do not really have formal regulations or specific governance framework that can, quote unquote, regulate AI. I'm just going to close my response to that question by saying something like this. If you live in Indonesia, if you live in Vietnam, you all know motorbikes looks like, right? So a motorbike is designed with a brake, right? So that it could go faster. So it means we have to regulate AI so that it can innovate, it can help our life much, much easier. Innovations need to go faster, but we have to put a brake, just like how we design a motorbike. Put a brake so that it could go faster.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Sure, please.
Thank you. I remember that I was interviewed by local media last week about this issue on digital governance made by Indonesian government, because the Minister of Digital Communication claimed that they already have achieved a maximum number of digital literacy in Indonesia. During that time, I was argued that the digital literacy can be claimed by the government, but what about the information literacy? Because it was different. As we can see that Indonesia are right now, even though it is archipelago, right? It was actually kind of challenging to have these connections of digital technology from one place to another, because it conceive of different islands, and also we have very vast sea. So using the technology, and right now known as the low Earth orbit satellite, I think it's quite interesting to have that. So everyone can be connected, and actually almost everyone have their access to the digital technology. But what about the information literacy? I think is one of the challenges that should be addressed by the government, because as we can see that during the political situation, it was always a challenge for us, especially in Indonesia, to talk about this and also to disseminate the information and eradicate some kind of misinformation or hoaxes. And it still become a challenge and also a problem. Within this, I regard that the number one thing that should be considered is to have this kind of balance between the spread of digital technology in terms of the usage of technology itself, and also how people can use that. Because the digital governance should think about that as well, not only about how it should be produced and also disseminated, but without even thinking about how people can actually understand, to use and understand information itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these comments. Other questions?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rhea Peñaflor from the Philippines, CASIP Batch 2. Given the rapid deployment of AI in social protection systems, of course, encompassing social welfare, labor market intervention, social insurance, and social safety nets, from fraud detection to automated eligibility screening, what do you think are the governance mechanisms do you consider most urgent to prevent algorithmic biases? Because of course there, if you even look at Facebook and the others social media outfits, there are marketing advertisements, etc., etc. So what's the most urgent to prevent algorithmic biases, ensure grievance redressal, and protect data dignity, as well as prevent corruption? Because of course it's all system, but how do we ensure that there's no corruption in there, especially in contexts where digital literacy and institutional safeguards, as you mentioned earlier, are not yet in place or actually absent since AI is relatively new? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, algorithmic bias. We all know that algorithms are inherently biased. It is an extension of the biases of the creators. So I'm using the word creators, or if you work with the tech developers, we call them developers, right? The question is, when we think about biases, we need to think about when the technology is being designed. The problem is, we realize biases after the technology is being deployed. That is where all the problems starting. But if we would like to influence the development process of the technology, it's hard. Most tech companies will not allow you to have the back-end story. You will not get access to the back-end development of technologies for whatever reasons. So that is the problem that we cannot do. The same story applies to the idea of content moderations. In the Philippines during the elections, in Indonesia during the riot, so TikTok was banned, but it was too late. It was too late. And then who has the authority to moderate content? TikTok, right? But they say it doesn't violate the community guidelines. And then the algorithm pushed it because it went viral. So in this case, again, I'm pro-innovation, which tech companies and social media companies are advocating for. But the thing is, we also need to hold them accountable. If they cannot be held accountable, then the government, as the quote-unquote regulator, need to have regulations that will hold the tech companies accountable. The thing is, if we think about it, so many different stories. If you ban social media companies, those who pro-freedom would say it is part of censorships. It is part of crackdown on freedoms. But the thing is, if you do not isolate misinformation, disinformation into certain things, that it will spread widely. So we need to have the idea, disconnection for protections. So sometimes we have to disconnect one thing to protect the whole society. Just like we need a brake in our motorbike in order for we could avoid accidents and harming others. So that is just an example of how we could think about algorithmic bias. And then this is, I'm not a fan of these solutions, but I'm just going to say it. If tech companies cannot be held accountable, if the government doesn't have the frameworks to regulate tech companies and social media platforms, then we have to put the burden on the users. They have to self-equip themselves with digital literacy, with information literacy, and most importantly is how to protect their personal data, how to secure their personal information, and how to interact online safely. And that is not an easy task. And it is unfair. It is unfair. If we put the burden on the users, we have to put the burdens on the creators because they they make a lot of profits. So they have to add content moderators, human content moderators. That is one. And then second, they have to have this moral compass. I know it's difficult. Some of you are going to debate it because tech company doesn't really have that if it comes to that. So what I'm suggesting is it is important to, again, until we have the frameworks to regulate the internet, to integrate the social media platform of AI, we have to equip ourselves. Unfortunately, that is something that we know so far until we have stronger, solid framework that can hold everybody accountable, including the regulators and the operators and the users.
Thank you. Thank you. Others? Any other comments? Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Although my talk wasn't entirely about AI, I think your question was getting at a bigger picture, a really important question, which is how to use AI in important decision making. And there's a Pew Research Center's report on Americans' view toward AI that came out a couple years ago, and I think they asked about like American citizens' view toward whether they think it's okay to use AI in making important decisions, ranging from accepting someone to college and approving or rejecting mortgages. But there are lower level, less important decisions. And as you can imagine, I think as we go up the ladder, like mortgage acceptance, like college admission, these important decisions, people were sort of half and half and sort of against the use of AI. But if we think about the spectrum, it could be entirely by human. There could be connected to corruption. There could be mistakes, right? Entirely AI. Is it more objective, or is it in and of itself necessarily more biased? I think it's an empirical question. Yet, one thing I do want to mention is a Korean case. So in Korea, at one point, the well-known portal site, Naver, the majority of Korean people online were consuming news on this portal. So what headlines, what articles from which news organizations make it to the front page of Naver was a big deal. And of course, back then, it was human editors making the picks. And citizens were not happy. They were thinking it was more biased. So we tune into the use of AI, so like automatically, before it became all tailored toward individual users. Anyways, I think I don't have a good answer, but on the spectrum of entirely relying on human decisions versus entirely relying on AI and algorithms, I think it would be helpful to listen to the people, what the public sentiment is, and at the same time, sort of course, as a researcher, I would say empirical investigation into which one is better for which decisions is going to be also important.
Thank you. I just want to add one more thing. So the companies, for example, that pay premium value to their original IP, so original intellectual property, they tend to not use AI because, of course, if you, for example, if you're a fashion company and you're planning your next collection for the spring, right? You're not going to upload your sketches on AI. You're not going to do that. So anything that has to be guarded, right, will stay outside AI. They use AI for generating emails, but not for uploading or improving their original designs, because obviously these designs are then used to train AI to design similar things in the future. Thank you. Other questions, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fermar Kasip, batch 11 from the Philippines. Excellent presentation. My question is, how do you foresee, what are the possible scenarios do you think will happen in the near future, let's say 5 to 10 years from now, on the advancement of digital platforms and AI in connection to global connectivity, user rights to access of information, and also government mechanisms of the framework for protection? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not good at predicting things, but I could give you a history of how technology evolved. come. So think about this. Back in the 1960s, when the first time televisions was popular, people were saying that, look, if you watch too many criminal shows, you would be likely become paranoid or probably become bad things, bad person, blah, 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 blah. And then when the first time we were looking, when we adopting mobile phones, people were also arguing that mobile phones will polarize us, which is true to some extent, would make us less social. So if we're looking at the history of technology, the technology will evolve, it will change, as well as we are human. Remember that we are human and we are very resilient. We are very nimble. We know how to respond changes that comes to technology. That is one. Second, this is something that is still ongoing. We have to protect our personal data in these days. That is really important. Whatever you are sharing will be used for training AI. The AI will be fed with whatever you have. That will be happening for the next 3-4 years, or 5 probably. But then the next questions would be, what happens if everything is flooded by AI creation? And then our original touch as a human will become oil these days. It will become a rare commodity like Ethereum that is used to build battery and many different things. So that would happen if, again, we do not put a brake on AI development industry. And this is for everybody. Innovation is not a race. Innovation should become something that help us to be safe and more efficient. But again, we have to put the framework, the governance that can slow down the innovations to slow down the ramifications of innovations without slowing down the innovations itself. I know you don't like my answer, but that's okay.
Thank you. Others?
So I actually base my view on the current condition, especially what happened in Indonesia, where the government is actually quite enjoying, not only the government, but also the other institutions, such as the education institution, are enjoying using AI. Yeah? I mean, they are allocating, for example, to buy the license to access the AI in full, full access, yeah. So I think in the near future, I think, based on this practical point of view, the use of AI will be more massive, and it will give more sense of the policies and also the, the consideration, yeah, put by the government, or also the source of information and knowledge that made by the academics or even school students, for example, because they have a full access to the AI and they are allocating some money for that as well. So I'm thinking about this, how in the near future, I mean, if Abdul has already said that it should be like that, but I think in reality it will be like more and more people are using without any consideration what will happen to them or to the society, maybe in the next 10 or 15 years to come. But in next 5 years, I think it's still something that boom, yeah, for the AI.
From the eyes of migration, it's very unique. We try to understand why Donald Trump is very ambitious of kicking out people from the U.S. The fact that need migrants a lot. The U.S. is second biggest migrant recipient countries. They have like 35 to 37 million migrant documented, undocumented. But now out of blue, they are openly kicking out everyone. For us, it's not only a question of, oh, this is undocumented. We don't believe that. They've been undocumented for 20 years, you know, but there should be something behind that economically. And it's true. It's really about the shifting of the industry itself. So like, like what kind of industry that will bring more profit to the corporate, to the capitalist owner and so on. And those things are shifting now. So migrants, as we know, are really the first target to be removed. During COVID, for example, some of the sector died, like maritime, the tourism, hospitality, they died. So all these people are being kicked out. Now in the US, it's really a shifting of inner economic design. Donald Trump is already saying, now we will bring in the industry back to the US and we will employ our own people. That's what the commitment is. That's why you see this is the project being done. Now, in terms of migration, what we actually see, even without projecting what 5 years to come, the AI and the automation is actually being used to replace people. Okay? Japan has been the model forever. Now, many other countries are replicating Japan way. If we can use robot, why we should use human labor? It's cheaper. So that's number one. The number two is you actually see government, whether this is host government, even our own government, are actually using AI to outsource their services. For example, when we need our government, they will tell us, click this number or contact this click, and then somebody or AI will respond to you. Right? So you see the government services has been minimized to the point that now it is AI who is entertaining you. And actually it's quite scary because that's the reason why a lot of migrants, the refugees who are being stranded during COVID-19 cannot get help. They cannot get first-hand help from the government. That's why they have to rely to NGOs, organizations for rescue. So, but what we see is it's become a trend that is being enforced further in all layers. And that's actually the scariest one. So in one side of that, the government said this is efficiency, this is more effective. You can, you can connect to us faster and better. It's efficiency and it's effective. But in the other side of that is we are being distanced away from the government direct services. And I think this is the part for migrants is scarier than other thing. Aside of the layoff of massive, job loss, is also the fact that the government leaving us alone behind, to cope up with our consequences. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel because we're out of time. I want to really thank the panel for this really insightful discussion. And thank the audience as well.